This Sunday's verse comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. No testing has overtaken you that is not common to everyone. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tested beyond your strength, but with the testing he will also provide the way out so that you may be able to endure it. St. Paul here in this verse is talking to the people of Corinth that God will provide a way out for the temptation to participate in polytheistic rituals. In the whole chapter of 1 Corinthians 10, he talks about avoiding idolatry and whatnot. This week's verse fits in with the context of the whole chapter, but even by itself we can see how powerful the words are. We can take just this verse by itself and dissect it, without having to mention idolatry and polytheistic rituals. Different translations use the word temptation in this verse. Temptation from Greek only means trials. I like either version. When I think of the word temptation, I think of Jesus in the desert fighting the temptation of Satan. That can be found in Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 through 11. Take the time to read through it. Jesus is the best example for us to follow when it comes to temptations. Temptation, or our trials, is not something that we can escape. It's essential to our lives, and I'll explain why. No testing has overtaken you that is not common to everyone. When we're having a hard time in life, it's easy to give up. We're caught in a storm, but everyone else around us seems to be happy in their perfect little lives, and nothing can possibly go wrong. We might even feel a little bit of resentment. During these times, we feel so alone and that nothing will ever go right for us. But the good news is, we have a God that hears everything. He hears our cries and he hears our prayers. We have to remember that we're not the only ones dealing with problems in life. For example, there are people in third world countries that have it way worse than we do. Some people don't have running water, and they don't have electricity, and barely enough food to get by. I've shared this next bit with a couple friends of mine, and we've had some extensive discussions about it. But here in the United States, the usual mentality is that we can buy vibes and we don't need God. Makes me giggle, because it's not the case. Actually, it's quite the opposite. There are people in other parts of the world who are executed for carrying around a Bible or for getting baptized in the name of Jesus Christ, when it's just so easy to do here, and we won't get anything like that to happen to us. When we're going through a rough time in life, it's important to remember that God is there for us. Jesus said he would never leave us or abandon us. If you put your faith in God and listen to what he has to say, you'll be able to get through anything. Even if everything is going well for us, we should still remember to give praise and thanks to God always. We shouldn't just go to him only with our problems. Otherwise, what good does that do for us? God is faithful, and he will not let you be to strength, but with the testing he will also provide the way out so that you may be able to endure it. God often does things in our lives to make us unlearn something and to learn something else. It's in some sort of step process. First, I'll teach you this, and then we'll move on to this, and so on and so forth. I've experienced this in my own life, and I'll use myself as an example. When I first started coming to God more with my prayers, I started praying for things I never would have prayed about. I prayed to God about something very specific, and the answer came fast and hard. I asked God to make me more humble. Have you ever heard the saying, be careful what you ask for? So I quit my management job. That was first. I was unemployed for 2 weeks before I was offered a job at Costco. I've always wanted to work for Costco and was excited about it. I got an interview through a friend of mine, and I started at Costco June of 2012. I worked for a year and a half in the food court. God put me there for a reason. He was teaching me humility just like I asked him to do. I had to deal with a fast-paced environment with cranky members and coworkers that didn't want to do their job, and even a boss that was a jerk. My prayer life became the center of my day, and I prayed every day that the Lord would help me to be patient, honest, kind, generous, unselfish, and humble in everything that I did. I became more conscious of my thoughts and actions and how it affected others, and God became the center of my life, just like he intended it to be. Throughout my whole time in the food court, I applied for opening after opening after opening to get out of that department. I wanted to get out of there at all costs. There were days where I didn't think I was going to keep my employment with Costco, that I would quit, or that I would get fired, and there were days I didn't think I would survive. I had to keep reminding myself that God brought me there for a reason. I knew I graduated when, after many turndowns to go to other departments, God finally let me out of the food court and to a different department, which was the front end. I quickly realized that this was the next part of his teaching me. This lesson on the front end was for patience. Humility was covered. Being on the front end was very difficult for me to handle at first. The members that came through were always rude and very demanding, and it was hard for me to remain patient most of the time. Finally, I started getting the hang of it, and my patience got much, much better. I knew I graduated again when I applied for a different department in the warehouse and got it. I was on the front end for only 5 months, thankfully. I moved on to the sales department, which is the electronics department in the store. I once again realized that God was teaching me another lesson. This one was about material things. As I walked through the department, I kept saying, "Wow, I want that," and "Ooh, I want this." The first day I worked in the department, I bought a GPS. Oops. I've learned to control myself since then a little better. It took some beating from the Lord, but I'm glad that He has taught me all He has taught me and brought me where I am today. Well, because I was only working part-time, I couldn't afford to live on my own anymore. I prayed about it and asked God what I should do. I just got a new car, and I was only able to pay my bills, and I had to keep using my savings account for my rent, and I didn't want to do the roommate thing again. I came to the conclusion that if I didn't have to pay rent, I would be okay financially. I started losing sleep, and I didn't know what to do. But then my answer came to me from God. I needed to move back in with my parents. At first, I thought, no way, I don't want to move back in with... No, Then I realized that God was telling me that living on my own became a pride thing. I loved telling people I lived on my own, and I enjoyed my personal space, and I enjoyed doing things on my own. My independence sometimes takes its toll on me, even still today. My pride was killing my finances, and this was God's way of getting rid of that pride. I said, "Okay, Lord, I'll do as you say." I put all my stuff into storage and moved back in with my parents. Throughout this whole time, God tested me, but it was never beyond anything that I could handle. He brought me there, and He brought me out. That goes for anyone else, too. And I know I'm not done yet. If God brings me somewhere else, I know that He's going to get me through it again. He'll bring you where you need to be, and He'll teach you something or unteach you something and bring you out of it. James says it perfectly from James 1, verses 2 through 4. My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing.